Hi there, I'm King Martin. People know me as Arch on Warcraft, and this is our guide to Kilrogg Deadeye in Hellfire Citadel on heroic difficulty as it currently stands on the PTR. As it seemed to be pretty in a good shape. It didn't seem broken. It didn't seem as if there's any potential bugs, which we found. It's a very good fight. It's very fun. Lots of green fire, as true to the Hellfire Citadel raid so far. There's a few mechanics to it, there's a few adds to it, so what we'll do is before we get onto the boss mechanics, we'll go over the individual adds that spawn. Right, first of all, there is Salivating Bloodbusters. These will drop down from the sides of the room towards the middle, maybe towards the back, quite a fair distance from the boss. And they will continually walk towards the green puddle behind the boss. Should they reach the green puddle, they will spawn into a hulking terror. Now, as far as we can tell, because Blizzard doesn't want you never getting a hulking terror, periodically one salivating bloodthirster will jump down right on top of the blood pool and spawn into a hulking terror. So you will always have a hulking terror to deal with, every 30 seconds, every minute, something like that. However, if you don't want too many of them, and that is a good thing because you don't want too many of them, then you need to kill all of the bloodthirsters as they're travelling. They don't have a huge amount of health. I think it's about 1 million. They can't be stunned. They can be slowed. So as long as your DPS focus on them as soon as they appear, you won't have any problems getting them down before they get to the blood pool. But if people are lazy and just tunnel vision the boss, then you are going to start running into problems and getting overrun by hulking terrors. Now, the hulking terrors themselves, the abilities they do, they've got a conal attack, so you need to obviously make sure you're not standing in front of them. They will do a cast, which is an AoE ability which will hit everybody in the raid and then put a dot on them, which does a little bit of damage. Now, this is a tricky one because it can be interrupted, but if you interrupt it, they will have 150% increased cast speed. So as far as I can gather, you want to pick and choose which one you want to interrupt. So if it's going to come at a bad time when there's other AoE damage going out, then you want to interrupt it. I didn't get a chance to see how often they cast it, so I don't know whether it's a case of they'll only cast 1 or 2 while they're alive, or they'll cast 3 or 4. It looked like maybe 1 or 2, but I don't know how many they were interrupting, so I think it's a case of you definitely want to pick and choose which one you interrupt, because if you interrupt too many, you're going to get to a point where you won't be able to interrupt the one where you really want to interrupt it. So that's how that works. They also explode for a lot of damage to anybody nearby when they die, and when they die they will also, if you get hit by the damage when they die, you will get covered in fell blood. Now it's important to remember that that's where the fell blood comes from. I'll go over what that's tied in with later, but that covers you in fell blood if you're hit by the explosion, so you need to move away from that when they die. And also, when they die, the 5 closest players will get 20 extra fell corruption. Now, that's not a certain range, that's just the 5 closest players, so it doesn't matter how far away you are. If you're the closest, you're going to get it. Now, that's a mechanic that's in this fight. It's called fell corruption. It doesn't say how much it stacks up to. I think it's 100, but when you reach 100 or max, you will become mind controlled. Now, as it stands, I couldn't see any actual representation of what your current fell corruption is. There's no bar, there's no debuff. I don't know whether it's something that's going to have to be tracked via boss mods or something like that. But it might be that it's bugged and it's not actually implemented. So we didn't see anybody get mind controlled, and I don't think anybody was playing particularly cautiously regarding the fell corruption, so it might not be working as intended at the moment, but we'll see how that goes when it comes out on live. That's pretty much all the abilities there. The other rest of the abilities are the boss abilities. So first of all, he's got an ability called Heartseeker. Now, this is similar in visual representation as Impale from Blackhand, where there's an arrow, he targets the player, there's an arrow around him showing you where he's going to fire, and then it fires the Heartseeker spear at him. Now, this is different to Impale because it can't be soaked. It travels, it's piercing. So it will travel from him to the target player and it will hit everybody in between. So what we recommend is having everybody grouped to one side of the room, and then the person with Heartseeker will scooch over to the other side of the room, ideally being as far away from the boss as possible, because anybody that takes damage from the Heartseeker spawns a blood globule. Now, one thing to note, tanks and melee, we were finding, we don't know whether this is a bug or whether it's intended, that before he threw the Heartseeker spear, he would draw it backwards behind him, and if you were stood directly behind him, you'd actually get hit by the spear before he's thrown it. So you want to make sure you give him a fair bit of space, max melee distance, and possibly if it still hits you, then have to step out of melee distance for a while, because you really cannot be hit by this spear if you're not the targeted player. You only want one blood globule to spawn at a time. Now, this blood globule, when spawned, will move towards the boss. Can't be stunned, don't think it can be slowed. It doesn't have a huge amount of health. Again, it's got about 1 million or 2 million health, so it needs to be focused down, as with all the other ads. If this reaches the boss, it will explode for quite a substantial amount of AoE damage, and it's not very helpful. It's pretty detrimental, considering how easy it is to kill them, and how if everybody's focusing and everybody actually does their job of focusing on the blood globules, they will die, guaranteed, unless they're like right next to the boss. In that case, you don't have very much time, which is why you want to be as far away as possible. Now, should you be covered in fell blood and be targeted with Heartseeker, you will instead summon a fell blood globule. Now, we don't know how long the fell blood debuff lasts, so because I was never close enough to the health, the big guy, to be able to actually get hit by it, we didn't see it. We did see fell blood globules spawn, and it always seemed to be that if somebody in melee got hit by the spear on its way, because they would obviously be the ones that are covered in fell blood. So if you do have fell blood, make sure you definitely don't get hit by the spear, and if you are targeted with the spear and you've got fell blood, then you need to make sure you're as far away as possible so that we're going to have plenty of time to kill it. Now, the fell blood globule differs to the normal blood globule in as much as if it reaches the boss, it will do even more damage, somewhere around the region of twice as much damage to the raid, and it will heal the boss for 15% of his maximum health. So if it doesn't kill your entire raid, it will destroy your progress, because it's going to heal for a fuck ton. So if you've got fell blood and you target with Heartseeker, you need to get the fuck out as far as you can, otherwise you're going to wipe the raid if you don't have enough time to kill the fell blood globule. Next on his artillery list is Deadly Throws. Now, this is very easy to avoid. It's basically, he'll spin around in a crazy whirlwind, throwing out fell fire bolts around the room, and a green swirly patch will spawn underneath you and every player, and then they will impact, and then as you move, another one will spawn, another one. So basically, you just got to keep moving around. It's very, very easy to avoid it. You just need to bear in mind that it spawns under every player, so if you're all grouped up, as long as you don't all end up standing on top of each other, if you're not paying attention, you can end up accidentally running into other people's circles. But just open your eyes, don't worry about DPSing, other than obviously maybe if you get a bad time, you've got lots of enemies that are about to reach the pool, then you want to try and still get damage done on them. But generally, it's very easy to avoid. Now, he also has a tank ability that you need to watch out for. It does a crap ton of damage if you don't have active mitigation up. And if you take the damage, you'll get 40% increased damage taken from the next one, and this is negated by having active nip mitigation up, so it's very easy for tanks to avoid. Tanks that know what they're doing, so just put an active mit up for that. And the final thing that he does is an ability called Visions of Death. Now, this will be, I'm going to say 2 on every difficulty, just because we had 16 players and we had 2 circles, and as far as we knew, everybody else had 2 circles. So I don't know whether it's always going to be 2, whether it scales with the size of your raid. But he will start casting an ability called Visions of Death, and he will put 2 circles in front of him, and you need to have a player in each of these circles. If you don't, he will do raid-wide damage, which isn't, substantial. It's just about 250,000 damage, but it's a case of what you've lost the chance to do is what's going to be detrimental to the raid. Whoever's standing in these circles will get teleported into Stormwind Keep, where you'll be fighting alongside Archmage Khadgar. He teleports you to the moment of your death, basically, so into the future. And whilst you're there with Khadgar, lots and lots of demons will come in. There's 3 kinds of demons. There's small, well, I say small, they're imps. They're not very small, but they have the smallest health. There's imps that have the lowest health, but deal a substantial amount of damage if they finish their cast. It's quite a long cast, maybe like 5-second cast. There's Bigger Ad, who has more health, and then there's a third Ad who has even more health. Then basically, when you're in there, if you die, there's a timer, so you only get a certain amount of time in there, and if you die, I believe, then you're teleported out. But you want to stay in there as long as you can, ideally, because every single enemy you kill in this Stormwind Keep, you will get, if you're a damage player, you will get a 30% damage buff. Now this stacks while you're in there, so if you kill an enemy in there, 30% increased damage. Kill another enemy in there, got another 30% damage for while you're in there, and it refreshes it. So the more you kill, the more you're going to be able to kill. And these start coming in thick and fast, so you will eventually start to be able to AoE the crap out of them. Now, after you get teleported out, you're going to have that damage buff for a minute. Now, I went in there as Destruction, and I managed to get 6 stacks, so I came out with a 1-minute buff for 180% increased damage. Now, healers, if you go in there, you're going to get a 30% increased healing done buff, as well as sort of an aura, which anybody nearby has their Fel Corruption reduced by a certain amount every second. So what we gathered was, because at first the Fel Corruption isn't going to be a problem because it's going to take a while to stack up, we've sent in damage dealers first to the first 1 or 2, and then maybe after, depending on how quickly a raid is getting Fel Corruption, you start sending a damage dealer and a healer in on the 3rd or the 4th Visions of Death, so that when they come out you're going to have the aura to start reducing everybody's Fel Corruption. Now, it looks like the timing is so that you're basically going to choose a player and send that player in the first one, and they're going to get some damage buffs. They're going to come out and do some damage, and then they're going to go back into the second one, and they're also going to still have their buff by this point, which means they're going to be able to kill more enemies than last time, because they're going to have this huge damage buff, which is going to refresh the damage buff, and so their damage buff is going to stack more and more and more. So towards the end, they're going to have a ridiculous amount of damage. We believe that's the way it's going to go, but it could potentially be that they put some sort of debuff so that you can't go in if you've already been in, or you can't go in if you've got the damage buff, or something along those lines. So it could be that you're going to have to rotate people around between who goes in. But that is going to be a very substantial buff. I mean, I only went in once and I managed to get 100% increase damage. So that's quite a lot. And considering we had 2 damage dealers with that buff, it's very useful. So that's pretty much every mechanic. That's everything there is in the fight. It was very fun. It was great fun. We will have to see how the Fel Corruption gets implemented, because I don't think it's actually working as intended at the moment. But all in all, so long story short, as long as your DPS are on the ball and switch to the correct target as and when they spawn, you shouldn't have any problems. This does seem like a fairly straightforward fight. So hope you guys enjoyed it. If it helps you with any future kills, then be sure to give us a like or a thumbs up. Subscribe for more future videos. We will be continuing with the PTR testing, and there's also Warlock guides and the likes and such coming up as and when changes are made. So ciao for now, and I'll see you in the next video.